enormous was coming, something that would either save them or crush them beneath its tracks. Private Daniel Mercer lay face down in the mud outside Kasserine Pass, his cheek pressed into cold earth that smelled of iron and cordite. Artillery thunder rolled across the Tunisian hills. German fire had pinned the American column for hours. Their trucks burned behind them. Radios were dead. Orders were useless. Then came the sound. Not the sharp crack of a rifle. Not the scream of shells. A deep, grinding roar. Slow. Heavy. Relentless. It grew louder until it swallowed everything else. The shouting, the explosions, even Mercer's own breath. Men lifted their heads. Someone whispered, almost reverently, "Jesus, look at that." Out of the smoke crawled a machine that seemed less built than forged. 40 tons of American steel, slanted armor smeared with mud, its tracks chewing the earth like jaws. The white star on its hull was scarred, chipped, and alive. The M4 Sherman had arrived. At that moment, Mercer didn't know its name. He didn't know its specs, or that critics back home would one day call it undergunned, underarmored, and outmatched. All he knew was this. When the Sherman fired, the German machine gun nest vanished in flame. The men surged forward behind it, bodies pressed to its sides, trusting its mass more than prayer. The tank took hit after hit, clang, spark, scream, but it kept moving. That was the first time Mercer understood a truth the war would hammer into him again and again. Victory would not come from perfection. It would come from something that showed up everywhere, every time, and refused to stop. And that truth weighed 40 tons. The Sherman was not born heroic. It was born on assembly lines. In Detroit, Lima, and Chicago, where the smell of oil replaced the scent of bread, men and women worked shifts so long the clocks blurred. They weren't soldiers. They were machinists, welders, farmers turned engineers. They didn't talk about glory. They talked about quotas. America had entered a war it was not ready for, but it had something no other nation could match: industrial scale. German tanks were masterpieces, precise, deadly, complex. But they took time. Time America did not intend to give them. The Sherman was designed with brutal honesty. Easy to build, easy to repair, easy to ship across oceans. A tank that could be trained on quickly and fixed in a muddy field by men with shaking hands. 40 tons. 5 crewmen. A rotating turret. A gun is good enough. Good enough would save the world. By 1943, Shermans were rolling off ships like iron tides. North Africa, Sicily, Normandy, the Pacific. Where American boots landed, the Sherman followed. And inside those steel walls were boys barely old enough to shave, memorizing the sounds of death, the whine of incoming rounds, the hollow thud of armor hits, the scream of burning fuel. Daniel Mercer became one of them. Assigned as a loader, his world shrank to a metal box filled with sweat, smoke, and fear. His hands learned the weight of shells. His ears learned to live with noise. His heart learned how to race without breaking. The tank was not invincible. Everyone knew that. But it was there. Always there. Combat stripped illusions fast. In Italy, the Shermans faced narrow roads and high ground. German gunners waited patiently. One hit could turn the tank into a furnace. Mercer watched another Sherman burn once. Crew trapped, pounding from inside, the sound cut short by fire. That night, no one spoke. Fear lived in the tank with them. It sat between the men like a fifth crewman. But so did trust. Trust in the driver who kept them moving. Trust in the gunner who fired true. Trust in the machine that absorbed what human bodies could not. In Normandy after D-Day, hedgerows turned fields into killing zones. German panthers lurked like predators. The Sherman was outmatched, everyone admitted it. So the Americans adapted. They welded scrap metal onto hulls. They bolted hedgerow cutters to the front. They flanked. They were overwhelmed. They advanced again. The Sherman didn't win by being better. It won by being everywhere. Mercer learned that victory wasn't clean. It was cumulative. One field. One village. One tank at a time. The war became a grind, and the Sherman was built for grinding. By the time the Americans broke through France, the Shermans rolled day and night. Fuel trucks followed them like veins. Mechanics slept under hulls. The crews barely slept at all. Mercer's tank was nicknamed Providence. No one remembered who painted the name. It felt earned. Outside Bastogne, snow fell thick and silent. German counterattacks came hard. Shermans punched corridors through chaos, delivering ammunition, evacuation routes, and hope. There was a moment, brief, human, when Mercer rested his helmet against the turret and thought about home. About factories he'd never see. about the hands that built this machine without knowing his name. By the way, he thought as the engine idled beneath him, if you're clinging to this moment with me, make sure to hit subscribe, because what comes next is heavier still. Then the order came. Advance. The Sherman surged forward. In Germany, resistance stiffened. Cities burned. Roads were clogged with refugees and wreckage. The Shermans crossed rivers on pontoon bridges under fire. They pushed through rubble where no tank should move. They absorbed losses that would have broken a smaller force. Mercer was promoted, then hollowed. Friends disappeared between mornings. But the tanks kept coming. 40 tons. Again. 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 The Germans had better tanks. But they didn't have enough of them. America did. By April 1945, the Shermans rolled past camps no one had words for. The men stared. Some cried. Some went silent forever. The war machine had become a witness. When the surrender came, Mercer sat on the hull of Providence and felt nothing at first. Then everything. The tank was scarred, dented, alive. It had carried them through hell. Years later, historians would argue specs, armor thickness, firepower. But Mercer knew the truth. The Sherman won because it showed up. Because it could be built faster than it could be destroyed. Because it turned factories into front lines. Because it carried ordinary men through extraordinary horror. Victory weighed 40 tons. And history rolled forward on its tracks.